Hello students, today we are going to study the chapter The Happy Prince from our book Moments. This story is about a prince. When the prince was alive, he was very happy. After his death, a big statue of his was erected on a pedestal. From there, the statue of prince could see the entire city, and at that time he saw the miseries of the people. He saw the poor people, the homeless, their hunger and starvation. The prince was sad to see all these miseries, sadness of the people. So, in this chapter, we will study the story of this prince. The statue of a prince stood on a high platform overlooking the city. This prince was called a happy prince because when he was alive, he always remained very happy. Upon his death, a big statue of his was erected in the center of the city in his remembrance. The statue of this happy prince was covered with thin layer of gold, and instead of eyeballs there were two bright shiny sapphire stones. In the handle of his sword a bright ruby stone was placed. जो स्टैचू था उस पर थीन लेयर ऑफ गोल्ड का लगाया गया था और आई बॉल की जगह सैपियर्स के स्टोन्स थे और सॉर्ड के हैंडल में रूबी स्टोन लगा हुआ था. Swallow, a tiny bird, although it is not a human being, still the writer is referring to it as he and his. He says that all the friends of this swallow had flown away to Egypt 6 weeks ago. This bird did not go with them, but later it thought of going to Egypt to his friends, so it was on its way to Egypt. This bird kept on flying on its way to Egypt, and at night it reached the city of Happy Prince. It wanted to stay somewhere for the night. It thinks upon where to stay at night. The bird says that hopefully the city has made some arrangements for it to stay. Obviously, the bird does not mean what it is saying. We can say that probably the bird is being humorous. ना यहाँ जो बर्ड कह रही है कि आई होप द टाउन हैज़ मेड प्रिपरेशन, ये एक ह्यूमर है क्योंकि कोई भी ह्यूमन बीइंग एक बर्ड के स्वागत में कोई तैयारी नहीं करने वाला है. Now when this tiny bird saw this huge statue of the happy prince, it thought of staying there for the night. So the bird thought that it was a good place to spend the night. There was shelter and a lot of fresh air. So the bird came and alighted. It stopped and sat in between the feet of the statue of the happy prince. When the bird sat in between the feet of the happy prince, it was surrounded with gold, so it thought that it had a bedroom made of gold because it was surrounded by gold all around. As it was about to sleep, as it was putting its head under the wing, suddenly a large drop of water fell on it. The bird was surprised because all of a sudden a drop of water fell on it. It thought that neither was it raining nor the rainy season was going on. The swallow could not believe this because the sky was not cloudy and stars were shining. Just then another drop of water fell on it. Now bird जैसे ही प्रिंस के पैरों के बीच में सोने वाली थी, उसको अपने चारों तरफ गोल्ड ही गोल्ड नज़र आ रहा था. सो वो सोच रही थी कि उसका जो बेडरूम है वो गोल्ड का है, और जैसे ही सोने वाली थी तो उसके ऊपर एक ड्रॉप ऑफ वाटर गिरता है. वो सोचती है कि बारिश का तो टाइम है नहीं और बारिश हो नहीं रही है, सो ये रेन ड्रॉप कहाँ से आ रहे हैं। और आसमान भी जो है वो क्लाउडी नहीं है, काफ़ी शाइनी स्टार्स उसको दिख रहे हैं, और वो सभी सोच ही रही थी तो एक और वाटर ड्रॉप उसके ऊपर आके गिर जाता है। The swallow thought that the statue was useless because it was not able to protect it from the rain, so he thought he would not sleep under the statue. The swallow thought that it was better if it took shelter in a chimney of a house, and thought to move away from there because the statue was not able to protect from the रेन। स्टैचू उसको रेन से नहीं बचा सकता, सो सोचती है कि किसी चिमनी के अंदर जाके वो शेल्टर लेगी। Before the bird flew away, the third drop of water fell on him and it looked up. What did he see? Let's find out. As soon as the bird looked up, he saw that the eyes of the happy prince, the statues, were filled with tears. These drops of water were the tears drops falling off the statue's golden cheeks. When Swallow looked at Happy Prince's face, it was looking beautiful in the moonlight. The little bird's heart was filled with pity for the weeping statue. It asked the statue that who it was. The statue replied that it was the happy prince. The swallow thought that the statue was of the happy prince, but it was crying. The bird asked the statue that why it was crying. It added that it had soaked it with its tear. Now bird सोचती है कि जब इस स्टैचू का नाम हैप्पी प्रिंस है तो ये रो क्यों रहा है, और उसने ये भी बताया कि उसके आंसुओं से वो क्या हो गई है, भीग गई है। The happy prince narrated his story to the swallow. The happy prince said that when he was alive and he had a human heart means the heart which beats is alive. At that time he was not aware what tears were and what sorrow was, as he lived in a palace where there was happiness all around. All the people who used to walk in his court used to call him Happy Prince because he used to be happy all the time and he had not seen sorrow at all. And he said that he lived happily and died in happiness only. When he had a human heart, he never cried. He was not aware what tears were because he had seen happiness only and never faced any sorrow. Now when he was dead, they had put him so high in the form of a statue on a pedestal that he could see the whole city and the ugliness of the city. He could see that there were so many people living in misery, lack of food, hunger, money, homelessness. Now when the statue's heart was made of lead, a metal, although it did not have any feelings, then also when it saw all the sadness, it became sad and wept. When the happy prince was telling his sad story, the swallow was thinking about something else in his mind. The bird wondered that the statue of the prince was not made of solid gold. It was surprised. It thought that from outside the statue was covered with gold, but as it said that the heart was made of lead and not of gold, it realized that it was hollow and was not made of solid gold. It saw that the statue was very sad and was crying, so he did not make any personal remarks. It did not comment anything about the statue because it was giving the value to the statue's feeling. The statue continued its story. It spoke in a very musical voice that far away there was a house of a poor woman. The window of her house was open, and it could see through the window that she was sitting near the table. Her face was thin and she was tired. Her hands were rough and had become red because they had been pricked by the needle. The woman was a seamstress. सीमेट्रेस जो स्विंग का काम करते हैं, कपड़े सिलने का जो काम करते हैं, उनको बोला जाता है. The woman was embroidering flowers on a gown of the queen's maid who would walk along with the queen during the court ball. The statue said that the lady who was embroidering the gown had a little child who was not well. He was suffering from fever and was asking his mom to give him oranges. His mother was very poor. She had no money. She could only give him water, that also river water, and that is why the little boy was crying. So the happy prince statue requested the swallow to take out the ruby stone from the handle of its sword and give it to the lady. It added that its feet were fastened to the platform because of which it could not move. ना स्टोरी में हैप्पी प्रिंस ने एक सीमेस्ट्रेस के बारे में बताया है कि वो एक छोटा लड़का है जो बीमार है और उससे ऑरेंजेस मांग रहा है, और सीमेस्ट्रेस के पास पैसे नहीं हैं, सो वो उसको सिर्फ पानी देती है, वो भी नदी का. सो हैप्पी प्रिंस रिक्वेस्ट करता है सोलो से कि वो जो उसके सॉर्ड में रूबी है वो उसको निकाल के ले जाके उस सीमेट्रेस को दे दे. वो खुद इसलिए नहीं जा सकता क्योंकि उसके जो पैर हैं वो प्लेटफॉर्म से फिक्स्ड हैं, वो चल नहीं सकता. The swallow replied that it had to go to Egypt. Its friends were waiting for it. The swallow said that its friends were in Egypt. They were flying near the Nile River and talking to the large lotus flowers which grew there. Soon they would go to sleep, and so it wanted to reach Egypt at the earliest. The statue requested the swallow to stay with him for one night. He asked him to be his messenger and work on his behalf. He said that the boy was very thirsty and his mother was very sad, so it should go and give the ruby stone to her. Now स्टैचू प्रिंस रिक्वेस्ट करता है कि वो एक रात उसके साथ रुक जाए और वो उसके बिहाफ पे वो मैसेंजर बन के जाए और वो उसको ये जो रूबी है वो उसको दे दे. Once again the swallow opposed his request and said that it did not like boys, so why should it help that boy? Moreover, it had to go to Egypt. Now swallow एक बार फिर से उसके रिक्वेस्ट को रिफ्यूज करती है. मोरेवर उसको बॉयज पसंद नहीं है. सो वाई बॉयज पसंद नहीं है उसको? मे बी बिकॉज कि जो बच्चे होते हैं वो चिड़ियों को मारते हैं या उनको भगाते हैं, सो दैट मे बी द रीज़न. और वो ये भी कहती है कि उसके अलावा भी क्या है कि वो उसको इजिप्ट जाना है, यहाँ रुकना नहीं है. The happy prince was so sad that swallow felt sorry for him. It said that it was very cold there, but it would stay with him for one night and the next morning it would do his work. The happy prince thanked him. Finally, the swallow took out the ruby stone from the prince's sword, and the bird took the ruby in its beak and flew over the town. As the swallow was on its way to the poor woman's house, it passed the cathedral. Cathedral is a church, and on the church tower, white-colored marble angels were sculptured. Then he reached the palace. He crossed the palace, and he could hear the sound of dancing from inside the palace. When this swallow was crossing over the palace, a girl came out on the balcony along with her lover. She was hoping that the gown which she had given to the seamstress for embroidering would be ready on time. She was talking about the same gown on which the lady was doing embroidery, to whom the bird had to give the ruby stone. ना जब वो पैलेस से गुजरती है तो एक लड़की बाहर आती है अपने लवर के साथ और वो बताती है कि सीमेट्रेस टाइम पे उसका वो एम्ब्रॉयडरी का काम करके देगी या नहीं देगी, वो काफ़ी लेज़ी होती हैं. और उसी सीमेट्रेस की बात कर रही हैं जिसको कि ये स्वॉलो रूबी देने जा रही है. When the swallow flew over the river, ships also came along the way. Lanterns were hanging on their shelves. Finally, the swallow reached the woman's house. The boy was suffering from fever, and for that reason he was not able to go to sleep. So he was turning left and right on his bed, and his mother was very tired due to walking for long and had fallen asleep. The swallow put the ruby stone on the table near the thimble. Now thimble एक कैप जैसा होता है जिसको उंगलियों में पहना जाता है while swing. नीडल्स को चलाते समय प्रोटेक्शन के लिए उनको उंगलियों पे पहना जाता है. Now after keeping the ruby stone on the table, the swallow went near the boy as his mother was sleeping and no one was taking care of him. It shook its wing near him, because of which the boy could feel the cold air and felt better. The boy felt that he was getting better and went to sleep. With this, we can make out that the swallow was a kind-hearted bird. The swallow flew back and went to the statue of the happy prince and told him that what all he had done. Now the bird felt warm. It says that it was very strange that it was feeling little warm even though the weather was very cold. The prince said that it was feeling warm because it had done a good deed. It had helped someone. After listening to Happy Prince, the swallow started thinking, and when he started thinking, he felt sleepy because whenever he thought, he used to feel sleepy. Next morning, the swallow bird went to the river and took a bath and thought that night he would reach Egypt. He was very happy. So the swallow bird visited all the monuments of the city, and finally he went and sat on the high tower of the church. When it was night and the moon rose in the sky, the swallow went to Happy Prince and sought permission to leave for Egypt. Now again Happy Prince requested Swallow to stay with him for one more night, and Swallow replied that he needed to go to Egypt because his friends were waiting for him. Now here the Happy Prince is telling the Swallow about his second work. He says that far away across the city I could see in a small dark room at the top of the house a young man is sitting. He was sitting on a desk on which the papers were spread all over, and he was trying to work hard. He had a glass lying near him in which withered flowers were lying. Further, the Happy Prince gave a description of that boy. He said that his hair were brown and crisp, which meant that he had not taken bath for a long time. His lips were red like a pomegranate, and he had big dreamy eyes. That means that this boy was very ambitious and hardworking. Further, the happy prince said that this boy needed to finish writing a play. He was a writer and he had to give the play to the director after writing. But he did not have strength to write anymore because he was feeling very cold. The boy had no money, so that's why there was no fire in his fireplace and he was very hungry also, due to which he was feeling very weak. The swallow understood what Happy Prince was trying to tell him. He knew that Happy Prince wanted to help this boy, so he agreed to stay back for one more night. And further, the swallow asked Happy Prince if he should take another ruby stone to give it to the young playwright, the one who writes play, just like he had given it to the old lady. playwright जो ड्रामा या प्ले जो लिखते हैं उनको कहा जाता है playwright. Prince said that it was very sad that he did not have any more ruby stone with him. Happy Prince said that now he had his eyes, which were made of very precious and rare sapphire stones, which had been bought thousands of years ago from India. So Happy Prince told Swallow to take out one sapphire and give it to the boy. The Swallow was very sad to learn that the Happy Prince wanted to give his eyes to that boy, and he started crying. He told Happy Prince that he could not do so. But then the Happy Prince ordered the swallow to do what he had told him to do. So finally the swallow took out one eye, one sapphire out of the prince's eye, and flew to the young man's garret. There was a hole on the roof of the room, so the swallow entered the room through that hole. The boy was sitting with his head on his hands, and that's why he did not hear the flutter of the bird's wing. And when he looked up, he saw the sapphire stone lying on the dried flowers. When the boy saw the beautiful stone, he felt that some admirer, some person who praised him, had sent a gift for him, so he thought that with this he could now finish his play. Now वो सैपियर को देख के उस प्ले राइटर को ऐसा लगता है कि कोई उसका जो एडमायरर है, उसका प्रशंसक है, उसने उसे ये गिफ्ट में भेजा है और नाउ वो प्ले को फिनिश कर पाएगा विद द हेल्प ऑफ दिस सैपियर. Next morning, the swallow bird flew down to the harbor and sat on a mast of a ship. He spoke loudly that he was going to Egypt, and when it was night, he flew back to Happy Prince. Swallow once again told the Happy Prince that it had come to say goodbye. He was going to Egypt. And once again Happy Prince requested Swallow to stay with him for one more night. The swallow said to the Happy Prince that the winter season had started, and after some time it would start snowing. The weather in Egypt was warm, and even the crocodiles lay on the mud lazily there, so he told him to let him go to Egypt. Now this was the third assignment. The Happy Prince said that there was a match girl. She was a little girl, and all her matchsticks had fallen in the gutter, that is sewage, and got wet. All her matchsticks were spoiled, so she could not sell them, and she would not earn any money. And when she would go home without money, then her father would get angry and beat her For this reason, the girl was crying. Further, the happy prince said that she was not wearing shoes or stockings and she had not covered her head. She was very poor. So he said to the swallow to take out another sapphire from his eyes and give it to her so that her father did not beat her. Now third assignment में एक लड़की है, मैच गर्ल मैच स्टिक बेचने वाली है और उसके जो मैच स्टिक्स हैं वो गिर गए हैं गटर के अंदर और वो ख़राब हो गए हैं, उसको बेच के अब पैसे नहीं मिलने वाले हैं और जब वो बिना पैसों के घर जाएगी तो उसके पापा उसको पीटेंगे, इस डर से वो रो रही है। सो हैप्पी प्रिंस उसको अपना दूसरी आंख जो है सैपियर सोलो को लेके जाने के लिए और उस लड़की को देने के लिए बोलता है। Solo agreed to stay with him for one more night, but he refused to take out another sapphire because if he did that, then Happy Prince would be blind. Again, Happy Prince told Swallow to do what he had ordered him. So finally, the swallow obeyed the Happy Prince's order and took another sapphire stone from his eye and flew to the little match girl. And when he saw the match girl, he bent very low and kept the sapphire stone on the little girl's hand. The little girl was very happy to see the stone and she went home happily. When Swallow returned to the Happy Prince, he told him that now he was blind and so he would stay with him forever. But Happy Prince said to the Swallow that he should go to Egypt. But Swallow refused and said that he would stay with him only, and she slept on the prince's feet. The swallow used to stay along with Happy Prince all the time and used to tell him the stories of the different places that he had visited. The Happy Prince said to the swallow to tell him wonderful things, but added that nothing was more wonderful than the suffering of the people. No mystery was bigger than sadness, and he wanted to know who all were sad in his kingdom. So he asked the swallow to go and let him know what he saw while flying over the city. Now वो swallow को शहर में घूम के और वहाँ पे जो कुछ भी है वो उसको बताने के लिए कहता है. So the swallow flew and took a round over the city and saw that the rich people were living happily in their beautiful houses and they were partying while the poor people were begging and sitting outside the gates. Then he went to the dark lanes where there was no light also and the poor people lived. There he saw that the children were hungry, due to which their faces had turned white. Further, the swallow saw two little boys under the archway of the bridge. They were lying much close to each other so that they kept themselves warm. They were so poor they did not have food, so they were trying to keep each other warm. The two children were starving and wondering that how hungry they were. Just then a watchman appeared and scolded them. He shouted and made them go away from there. The poor children kept wandering in the rain as they were homeless. Swallow went back to Happy Prince and told him what he had seen in the city. The Happy Prince told Swallow that his whole body was covered with fine gold. He could take tiny pieces of gold from his body and give it to the poor people in need. All the living beings required money, and when they would get gold, they would feel happy. Slowly, the swallow took out the gold layers from the statue of Happy Prince, and as he removed the layers of the gold, the Happy Prince's statue started looking dull and grey. As the statue of Happy Prince started looking dull and grey, the children grew happier because through it they were getting food to eat. Finally, it started snowing, and when a lot of snow fell, everything froze. Everyone was wearing clothes made of fur. Small children were wearing red color caps and were roaming here and there. They were skating on the ice. Swallow Bird was feeling very cold, but he kept on sitting near the Happy Prince's statue. He did not want to leave him because he loved the Happy Prince. The bird did not want to die, so he used to go to the bakery where the baker used to bake the bread, to eat the bread crumbs and try to keep himself warm by flapping his wings. The swallow was aware that he was about to die. He had only enough strength to fly back to the statue of Happy Prince, and he says, "Now when this swallow is about to die, he says to the Happy Prince that, 'Can I kiss your hand?' Happy Prince thought that the swallow wanted to go to Egypt, so he said that he was happy that finally the bird was going to Egypt. The Happy Prince said to the swallow that it had stayed there for a very long time and now it should go to Egypt. It wanted the bird to kiss its lips instead of the hands because the statue loved the bird. The swallow bird said to the Happy Prince that he was not going to Egypt but to the house of death. He added that death was a brother of sleep. He kissed the Happy Prince on his lips and fell down to the feet of Happy Prince and died. As soon as the bird died on the Happy Prince's feet, an unusual sound came out from the statue. The sound was of the breaking of the statue's heart, which was made of a lead. The heart broke because of the death of his beloved bird, but it is said that it was so cold that the heart broke into two pieces. नाउ यहाँ जो बर्ड के मरने से जो हैप्पी प्रिंस का जो दिल जो लीड से बना हुआ था वो टूट जाता है, लेकिन ऐसा कहा जाता है कि ठंड इतनी ज़्यादा थी कि वो दो टुकड़ों में टूट गया. The next morning, the mayor of the city, along with his councillors, was taking a round of the area where the statue of the Happy Prince was erected, and when he crossed the statue and looked up at it, he said that the statue of Happy Prince looked untidy. The mayor noticed that the ruby stone which was placed in the handle of the sword was missing. The sapphires from the statue's eyes were also missing, and the layer of the gold from its body was also missing. The mayor said that it seemed as if it was the statue of a beggar, and the town councillors agreed with him. The mayor noticed that a dead bird was lying on the feet of the statue. Then he told the town councillors to pass an order that birds were not allowed to die on the feet of the statue, and the town clerk made a note of the suggestion given by him. The art professor of the university said that now the statue of the Happy Prince did not look beautiful and was not useful anymore, and so they should demolish it. So they melted the statue, which was made of lead, in a furnace. The supervisor of the foundry saw a strange thing. The heart of the Happy Prince's statue, which was broken into two pieces, was not melting in the furnace. so they threw it as it is in the dust heap. Coincidentally, they threw the heart of the happy prince where the dead swallow was also lying. God asked one of his angels to bring him the two most precious things of the city. The angel brought the two pieces of the heart of the statue and the dead swallow bird. God said to the angel that it had brought the right thing, it had chosen the right things, which were indeed the most precious things of the city. He said that the bird would always sing in the garden of his paradise, and the happy prince would stay in his city of gold and admire him. Now भगवान ने अपने एंजल से बोला कि शहर से दो सबसे प्रीसियस चीज लेके आने के लिए. सो एंजल वो डेड बर्ड और जो स्टैचू का जो हार्ट था लीड का वो लेके गए. उन्होंने कहा कि ये आप जो सिलेक्ट किया है ये सही है और ये बर्ड अब पैराडाइज में के गार्डन में अब हमेशा गाती रहेगी और हैप्पी प्रिंस उनके सिटी ऑफ गोल्ड में रहेगा. सो हियर वी कम टू द एंड ऑफ दिस स्टोरी. थैंक यू.